chamber had the idea that if all the industries in town paid their workers in silver dollars for that week, that that would, you know, people would see that in their change, and when they went to pay a bill, and that would remind them that that started as $1 of wages in a local industry, and help emphasize the local economic impact of the industries in this town. And so they calculated, you know, what the weight of that much silver would be, and decided that that might make a nice addition to a newsreel. And so they contacted their contact at Universal International, and they said, well, yeah, that's all very nice, but we're not going to come down there to film, you know, a silver dollar payroll. We want you to develop a whole Frontier Day around that. And so the chamber, you know, was the one that led the event, and set up committees in various topics. And so there was a committee for beard growing, for example, because of course in the early 50s...
A committee for beard growing?
Yeah, because men didn't have beards in those days.
Okay.
And so they wanted to, you know, emphasize that and encourage men to grow a beard. They had a beard contest.
Yeah.
And for those that still wanted to shave, they set up a shaving permit, and of course that cost a little bit of money. And then if you were you know, connected to the downtown, they didn't find people that just came in from the country to, you know, to trade, but
sure,
anyone that was in town, if they were caught shaven, then there'd be a fine. And for a while anyway, they had a bear, they called it a bear cage, B-A-R-E, and that the Robron brothers built. And so you could get thrown into the bear cage, and the only way out was to go through a tank of water. And of course they, you know, brought a lot of people around to, you know, cheer on anyone that got thrown into the bear cage. And
how long did this whole celebration go on?
The setup, you know, took a number of months.
Really?
That turns up in the chamber scrapbooks. Where,
yeah.
You know, there's I remember there's a record in there of the committees and when they set those up. So yeah, so there was the shaving committee, there was a parade committee, there was entertainments. They brought in we call it square dancers from several communities in the area. There was a committee for promotions, and there were a number of people from that formed caravans that would go around to area towns. We've got photos of the group that went to Joplin, and so they worked out a whole skit where you know, some bearded guys were up there and were in this skit, and in frontier clothing, and one of them had a revolver and, you know, a sheriff's badge, and so that was all part of the drama. And then they had square dancers that would go as part of that. And the parade committee, you know, set out their rules. Of course, some of that was dictated by Universal International. They wanted the parade to not have any motorized vehicles. And so they contracted to bring in wagons from, I think it was from Claremore. There was somebody there that had a whole bunch of horse-drawn rigs. Yeah. And so they had, you know, of course, buggies and wagons. They had a stagecoach, and they had a fire engine brought in. And so there was, and so it turned into a huge parade, and that was part of what they did for the newsreel. And anyone that wanted to be on the newsreel had to be in frontier-style clothing. So,
and all of this is taking place in downtown Siloam Springs, where downtown Siloam Springs is the epicenter of all of this activity.
Right. And so they put banners up at one point to say, you know, excuse our beards, we're growing them for, for this event, and gave the dates, and, be sure to come back to town to see the final event.
But the whole thing goes on for months, sort of from beginning to end.
The planning and the development, it was not a lot of months. I mean, it was maybe 3 or 4 months at most.
Yeah.
And so, on the, and I think it was like a 2-day event.
Yeah.
And they, on each day of the event, Plus had a chicken barbecue out at Plant 1, and there's photos of that.
So initially, if I'm hearing you right, it sounds like initially the idea is let's have an event, really sort of an awareness event, so folks become aware of the extent to which these local industries are really important, and the way we can do that is pay people silver dollars, and then they're going to really notice where this income comes from, the industries. Right. But it sounds like it blew up into something a lot bigger. And is that because of the news agency that said, if you put on a bigger production, then we'll get involved?
Yeah, I don't think any of the rest of this would have developed if it wasn't for the newsreel. Yeah. And the promise of the newsreel.
Yeah.
So that's part of that's why I think it didn't really become a annual event.
Right.
They tried to revive it in the next year, and near as I can tell, it really didn't amount to.
Well, I can imagine.
But I should have added the other part of the timing of the event was to place it over a June 24, which was the traditional celebration of the town of Siloam Springs.
June 24.
Yeah, St. John's Day, and that had been the Masons' celebration of St. John's Day on June 24, 1880, became a citywide celebration, and so the town continued to celebrate that as the celebration of the town. I mean, it doesn't otherwise.
June 24.
Yeah.
Do you know why? Why did the town adopt St. John's Day? It's a Masons holiday,
right?
So the Masons were very influential here in town. That was very influential.
Yeah, there was a Masons Lodge here from before the town of Siloam Springs was established.
Oh.
It was the Key Lodge number 7.
Sure.
Was actually established out on Lindsay's Prairie, and they shared a building with the Baptist Church and the High Coast School for a while. Oh. And then they. So they still celebrate St. John's Day.
Do they?
And there's kind of a, I guess, quasi biblical reason for that. Because we know that John the Baptist was born, sometime before Jesus, and so they're taking it as
I see.
As having been born at the summer solstice, since Jesus was born
on the winter,
close to the winter solstice.
I see. Yeah.
And
interesting.
So they connect, the birth of John the Baptist and the birth of Jesus to the solar calendar.
It sounded like, my perception, so correct me if I'm wrong, that when we're thinking about what triggers this whole event, what gets this whole thing going in the first place, is it just coincidental that Plus Poultry comes to Siloam Springs and we have this event celebrating the industries in town? Or, had Plus Poultry not come, would this event even happened at all? Or are those two things directly connected so far as you know?
I suspect they're connected, and I think it was really just a case of the industries in this town growing in size and number to the point where the chamber felt like this was something worth celebrating. Maybe it would have happened without Plus. I guess that's still possible. But it sounds like the arrival of Plus was really an impetus to say, this is really becoming kind of a big deal. It was a big deal. It was, big in a lot of people's memories of, coming back to town at June 24 to see old friends and see the places of the town. There were, into the 1990s, there were, older citizens who would gather in the parks, on benches in the parks, and, hope that some of their old friends would come by and, visit with them. And, and then that continues, the idea of a June 24 celebration continues today as the Heritage Festival. So it's, it's changed many times over the years and been celebrated in many different ways. But I think the, significant thing is, celebrating the town at that midsummer time frame.